All right, welcome all to our webinar, How to Tackle Data Ownership Issues in ServiceNow. My name is Olga Viljanen. I'm a Customer Success Manager at Qualdatrix and your host for today. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to walk you through the structure of today's webinar. Our session will last approximately 30 minutes. During the session, you may submit your questions through the Q&A box, and we will address them to our speakers at the end of this session. To ensure the best experience for everyone, we will keep your microphones muted during the session. And this session will be recorded, and the recording will be available to you after. A few words about the webinar's agenda. It consists of three main parts: common data ownership pitfalls, proven strategies to overcome existing challenges, and practical examples using Data Content Manager tool. At this point, I'm pleased to introduce our speakers: Pekka Korpi, CEO of Qualdatrix, and Mikko Juola, CPO of Qualdatrix. So without further ado, we are ready to start. Pekka, Mikko, floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Olga,
and
welcome everybody to the event on my behalf as well. My name is Pekka. I'm the CEO of Qualdatrix, like Olga said. And today we're going to be talking about common data ownership pitfalls and how to resolve them in real life. So the reason for this topic is simply because we run into it almost every day. As you know, we develop and sell a product called Data Content Manager. And with the product, we give a lot of demos to different companies all over the world. And ownership is, I would say, maybe not the number one thing, but it always tends to come up. Even if it's not the number one thing in the initial discussion, after scratching the surface, it almost always pops up. So we've been dealing with this issue for a long time. And of course, Data Content Manager as a product has a lot of features that can help with the problem. But in this webinar, we're going to go through some of the top things that we notice. And then we're going to go through a couple of models or frameworks, maybe rather, that help you sort of slice the problem a little bit. And then towards the end, like Olga said, we're going to be showing you a concrete demo on how DCM can help. Some of the common data ownership pitfalls, we've chosen three, and I think I'll let Mikko talk you through a few of them. If you go through the next slide, please.
Yep, thanks, Pekka. So what are the pitfalls, the top three ones? The first one, kind of easy to guess. It's a problem if you don't have any ownership. And that's really quite common, that the ownership is missing. And you might ask, like, why? And there are at least two reasons. One may be that it's hard to find people who are willing to take the ownership, especially for more abstract things like business applications or services. In some big organizations or corporations, might be a little bit siloed, and also the responsibilities are kind of spread around the different business units. So nobody wants to take the full ownership of everything regarding applications, for example. And related to that, maybe it's because the data ownership is a little bit misunderstood. Like, what does it actually mean? And maybe main thing to mention is that being the data owner is not the same as being the owner of the thing itself. So these can be two different things. If you're responsible for your business application portfolio, for example, on a kind of business side, somebody else can take the responsibility of the data regarding the business applications, and that might help. But more about the solutions a little bit later. The last thing is that these responsibilities are a bit vague, also related to the misunderstandings, but the responsibilities don't always match with the operational way of working. So sometimes very high level, like senior executives or VPs, are responsible for something on paper, but do they really work on this topic on a daily basis? Have they even logged into ServiceNow lately, or like on a weekly basis? So you can think about the responsibility in different ways, and we've seen different ways to kind of tackle this. So Pekka, should we next talk about
Yeah, I just want
what
to
you
add
can
one of
do.
my favorite. I just sorry to interrupt, but I want to add
No.
one of my favorites is like in practice, this is like an area when you think about data governance as a whole. Obviously, ownership is a very, very big and important part of that. And the assumption is often there that we have this because we have a process, or we have ownership in place because we have systems that look at it, or we have people and all that in on paper. But then when you really look at it, very often what we see, the simplest possible example is that you have, let's say, 1,000 or 2,000 business applications in your organization, and then somebody leaves, and all of a sudden you don't have an owner for a bunch of them. And the reason is simply that often an HR system uh, obviously gets updated because the person left. And then maybe that signals something to ServiceNow, and then the person is inactive in ServiceNow as well. But there's a big leap from that to actually realizing that now we have business applications without that person. And often, and I would say almost always, when we, for example, run audits on this thing, we always find business applications without owners for that simple reason alone.
Yeah,
And it's very revealing sometimes when we do this, because we hear often that we're good, we don't have this problem, and then when we show it, it's sometimes interesting to see the faces of the people in that call.
yeah, that kind of concrete example is from the different trial sessions when we basically get to know the product together with the client, and then say that, or they often say that, yes, we've been working on this topic now for several months, and it's like a high priority. And then the first audit shows that, okay, there's still some work to be done. But speaking of that, how to tackle these
Yes.
challenges?
So the work is not going to go away, and due to the nature of the problem, I don't think it's ever going to go away. But there are several things that you can do to improve. And even though you can't really be 100% for, at least not for long, simply for the people coming and going alone, that's one simple reason to effectively cause change over time. There are some things that can sort of help you understand the problem and slice it and dice it a little bit so that you can create your strategies to help overcome these issues. And there's a couple of things we're going to be talking about today. And the first one is something that's called the consumer owner provider model. This is a model that we've been using for several years. We think it's simple enough to understand, but at the same time, it's very effective in sort of allocating the different roles related to data ownership. And there's three. Obviously, the consumers, these are the people or processes who actually use the data. They're the ones who should be giving you feedback or help you set the requirements, because they know what they need to be able to do their job or for the process to run. And then the owner, of course, is one of the key focus areas for today. These are the people who own the data. They are the people who own the data models and often processes as well. And then the data providers. These are often the overlooked part, or the most difficult to reach. They're the people who are supposed to maintain their data. So they could be, for example, your business application owners who are required to, or they're supposed to maintain a part of their business application data in ServiceNow. And the problem with these people often is that they don't really use ServiceNow necessarily as their day-to-day tool, or they may not even know that they need to go to ServiceNow to fill out a form or something like that. And Mikko, maybe you can continue from here.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing here is the misunderstanding between the kind of owner and provider role, or maybe not misunderstanding, but simply need to clarify the difference. And sometimes I see like people wondering that, or maybe there is some kind of an assumption that if you're the CMDB owner, for example, that's quite a big responsibility, that you would also kind of take care of all the data within the CMDB and make sure that it's correct. And in a way, you are making sure that it's correct, but not alone. So that's not a job for one person. So the data owners really, like Pekka said, they kind of own the overall concept. They have the responsibility to monitor the data quality and provide instructions to the providers on what they do, and kind of communicate the expectations both ways, to the providers what they should do, but also to the consumers on kind of what is possible, and negotiate the best compromise. So you shouldn't just put in everything you can That's one mistake from the provider side, that whatever is easily available, you put into the database. But then again, you can't always fill in all the requirements from the consumers. So you need to negotiate and make some compromises. But yeah, so the provider role, that's important. Maybe the terms are not familiar to everybody. So I wanted to highlight that sometimes the data providers are also called data stewards or CMDB librarians, maybe record owners. And that alone can be confusing, like what is an owner and a provider. But the record owner would be responsible for a handful of records, like this application owner being responsible for maybe 10 or 20 or 5 applications. But then the data owner on top would be responsible for all of them. And there are other related terms or roles as well. So I just picked two, the data custodian and CMDB champions. So we see different organizations also using these terms. And maybe those two roles are more in the middle, like between the providers and owners, basically supporting and helping both of them. So for example, if the application portfolio owner or an architect would be responsible or having the data owner role, then the application owners would be the providers, and then the champions could be some of the providers, kind of promoting the work and helping others, or they could be different people nominated, for example, per business unit to support the providers and maybe provide insight to the owners.
So Mikko, sorry, I was just going to ask, since you talk to a lot of people, so where, in your opinion, is usually the biggest gap or is the biggest problem?
Well, it a little bit depends on the area as well, like what part of the CMDB we are talking about. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it may be difficult to nominate one person being responsible for business applications to kind of have the oversight. So difficult to find the owner, but for the same data, you quite often have the providers. Maybe they don't know what they should do, but you have those people as part of your organization already. Maybe they just don't know what is expected from them. So I guess from that point of view, one common challenge is the need for communicating the expectations and how do people know what they're supposed to do and also have some ways to actually do it.
For sure,
so that's one thing. And then maybe on a different area like infrastructure, servers, or stuff like that, then the ownership is maybe more clear because you have like one team who is responsible for all the Windows servers, for example. So it doesn't spread across the whole organization in the same way.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but so different ways to do things on different domains, and that kind of leads us to the topic of who the owners are and where to find them, how to define them. And for that, we have another model or a method, simply to kind of split your environment into smaller areas or smaller entities. But if we kind of start from the beginning and think about the platform owner role, they might think that are they responsible for all the data within the platform? And in a way, yes, that's part of the responsibility. But how does it show on your, again, like day-to-day activities? It's more about the kind of policies and creating the governance model on top of the data. And that's basically what like one ServiceNow white paper about data governance also says, that the platform owner is the ultimately accountable person for creating the governance policy, like how things are under control. And then you might think that, okay, who are your friends? Like, who should you work with as a provider? And I'd say the first friend or best friend could be the platform architect or enterprise architect, ServiceNow architect, helping the platform owner to actually create these policies and standards together with other people. So here you see like administrators, data owners, process owners, CMDB managers. So then who are these people and how to kind of define their role in more detail will be discussed next. So starting with the platform owner, yes, responsible for everything on a high level, but if you want to be more concrete, you need to split your ServiceNow into different domains or areas, and CMDB is of course good example, but it's also quite big. But I know many organizations have a CMDB owner or CMDB manager already available. So that's a commonly used role. But then again, you could have another person responsible for foundation data or activity data. Activity data meaning the like different tickets, for example, vendor data, like different vendor organizations and contracts or products that they deliver. So do the high level split first, but again, thinking about the practical work, this is on a too high level. So the CSDM model and kind of how to split the CMDB in more detail helps a lot. And here you see the different domains defined by the CSDM, like design and build and so on. And inside these domains, you have different CI classes or different tables. And we think that this is a good level for defining the data ownership, so that somebody or like a person or a team would be responsible for the business applications as one data domain. So then it could be the portfolio owner, but if that person is like again like a very senior executive, then maybe it's the enterprise architect or a team of architects who take this overall responsibility. And when that is defined, then you can start thinking about the more detailed requirements and start building the data models within that domain. And in my opinion, you shouldn't do that before the responsibilities are clear. So who owns the domain as a whole? And then the next question is that who should take care of these business applications according to the model when you have defined the requirements? And there the answer is the data providers. So in this case, the application manager or application owner should take care of his or her own applications, and the blueprint or data model defines what is required.
So basically what I'm kind of hearing you say here is that you need to split this up into small enough pieces so that a single individual in the end owns something, so that it's not a shared responsibility at this level anymore.
Yeah,
it has to be a person.
Has to be a person or team, but it has to be concrete, so that that person or team knows what they are responsible for, they know what to do about it, and also who they work with. So this kind of structure we have here, from platform to different tiers to different domains, that will create a governance structure or a reporting structure that you can then use on your data quality reporting.
And I guess this also allows for personal KPIs and things like that, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, exactly. And the reporting on a personal level or related to your responsibilities is very clear, so that you get the reports that you need, that are kind of actionable and meaningful to you, instead of looking at like too high level metrics that you can't really do anything about.
So it looks very much like a DCM blueprint here on the right now. So are you going to show us how this works in practice?
Yeah, I guess that would be the next thing. So I'm going to show you a live demo on how things work from blueprint to audit to reporting. And I put this blueprint designer here in the background on purpose, because in the blueprint designer, you actually define these responsibilities. So on the governance tab here, we have the data provider configuration, and it's basically telling that for this blueprint, we have the IT application owner who should be responsible for the business application data according to this model. And then in the background, we also define the overall responsibilities. But let me show you that from our application. So this is DCM. If we have people here who have never seen it, the basic idea is that it's a plugin to your ServiceNow. So it's part of your ServiceNow instance. Everything happens within your own ServiceNow environment. We have our own navigation menu here on the left, and this is the home page showing the different modules. And everything in DCM starts from the blueprints. So you first create a data model, and I have one here already created. This is pretty much the CSDM crawl phase model for business applications, so that every application should have an application service. But what we are focusing here today are the responsibilities. So this link here means that every business application should have an IT application owner. And Pekka mentioned this problem of people leaving the company and maybe CMDB not keeping up. So in the blueprint, we can say that the user has to be active, the user who acts as a application owner, and then the audit will catch that. So you could basically start with the blueprint that only includes this bit and make sure that every record has an owner. And then if the owner is missing, you need to find one. Otherwise, you're kind of lost with the other requirements. So that's what we have here on the blueprint. Then you run an audit, and from the audit results, we see that, okay, how many records are compliant with the blueprint and how many have issues. And this is now related to all the requirements we had defined here, not only the ownership. But if we take some examples and, well, let's pick, for example, this compliance keeper application. From the more detailed audit messages, we see that this is missing the managed by group. So that's one of the critical deviations. And then there's one minor issue. Okay, it hasn't been updated within the last 6 months. So we require every application to be kind of reviewed on a regular basis. And then last thing here is that the business owner is missing. Okay, related to responsibilities, but in this case, this is defined as optional information. But these are the results you see for like one record. And then if we want to focus on particular requirements, we can check this. We can check the results by the blueprint elements. And this is the part we usually do in the trials and demos, that you run the first audit, you check the application owner data, and then you realize that, okay, even though you just had a project that lasted 2 months to update everything, you still find some records where the ownership is missing or it's no longer active. The person is no longer active. So in this case, I found 7 applications where the owner is no longer active and should be replaced by somebody else. And that's really the key. So when you have like fully green bar here, then if these application owners act as a data providers, you have a chance of success because they will help you kind of filling the rest of the details.
And then, of course, you have the blueprint and the audits. So in real life, you would probably schedule the audits to run on a regular basis, like on a weekly basis or so. So you're basically always going to be up to date with the audits, keeping track of people coming and going. So you'll know when somebody leaves.
Yes. And this view that you see here now is showing the results for one audit. And I can show you the dashboard next. But maybe regarding this kind of regular audits and being on top of the game is that when you have these audit messages that an application owner is missing, you can also create a task and then assign that, for example, to the domain owner, the business application domain owner, that they always know when there is records without ownership. And it's way easier to kind of fix the issue right after it happens, like right after the people leave the company instead of half a year later. But yeah, about reporting. So this is one dashboard I wanted to show you. So in here, we see the audit results for the domain owners, the person being responsible for like one part of the platform. Now the results are filtered with this business application domain. I could be responsible for other areas as well. But here we see that I'm in total 87% compliant. Then we see the trend, how things change over time. And below that, we have details about the records, like how many records are being audited. And what is really interesting are the problem areas. So based on the blueprints, we can easily see what kind of problems we have. So managed by groups are missing. And talking about the responsibilities now, if I'm the overall responsible person, kind of having the oversight role, checking the data quality on a regular basis, then below these reports, I also have details about the providers. So this will tell me that, well, myself and Pekka and Olga here are responsible for some applications, and those applications still have some data quality gaps. So these are the people I need to talk to, or maybe you have the responsibility on a group level. So HR, DevOps group, or HR system support have some applications that they need to look into. And if we pick Olga here as an example, then I can go back up and see exactly what she's been doing. So
Wow, she's
93,
doing well.
that's pretty
Way
good.
to go, Olga.
Trend is going up, and you see like more compliant records every week. So that's nice, but there's still some issues. So what relationships missing and some details missing. So Olga still has some work to be done. But as an overall responsible person, I know like what to talk about and who are the right people to talk about. So it's very kind of concrete, and the responsibilities are clear.
Okay.
And how I can handle my issues, Mikko?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's the topic for another webinar, I think.
Okay,
So,
it's a good reason to join us next time, right?
Yeah, I think we're about to close this call now. So went through the topics we had planned for today. I don't know, did we have
We have actually
any
two questions. Yes. When you mention application manager, what attributes you're referring to?
Yeah,
And
okay. So if I answer that first, it's quite often the IT application owner in the business application table, but that table has plenty of user references, and you can choose. So if the application owner is too high level, then maybe you use another reference like a managed by or something else to do this data quality work.
okay. And then another question was that does this audit integrated with data certificate to create assessment for the owners?
Well, it has its own kind of task creation system. So as I mentioned in the demo, if something is missing, then you can create a task about it, and that's very simple configuration that you do on top of the audit results. So you can choose when to create tasks and who to assign them to and what the tickets look like. But it's separate from the out-of-the-box data certification tasks.
All right. Thanks. I think we have no more questions, and we are almost running out of time. So I think at this point, I would like to thank you all for attending this webinar. We hope you found the information valuable. Then, yep, all right. You can use the QR code displayed on your screen to book an expert session for detailed discussion of DCM, if you wish so. We wish you a very nice evening, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you very
for
much.
joining.
Have a great day. Nice evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.